All right, friends, I am so excited for you to meet a very special guest today. We have Gabrielle Stone on our show. Hi, Gabrielle. How are you?
Hi, I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
I love that you have a thought bubble by your head, by the way. I meant to I meant to ask you about that before I hit record, but just curious, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see what I mean. Is that supposed to symbolize anything or is that just, on your wall for decor?
When we started my podcast in the pandemic, we made this kind of like the podcast wall. And whenever we would have a guest come over, they would write whatever quote they loved or word that represented them in the little thought bubbles. And now they're just kind of here. So
I'm obsessed with that. It's kind of like creating an intention for the conversation in the same way that
yeah,
people, right? Like you pick a word of the year. Do you do that, by the way?
I don't. I had a friend who did it and posted it on her Instagram, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a good idea." I don't, but I do. I go into each year not necessarily with like a vision board, although I've done those in the past, but like a very clear list of intentions of like, this is what I'm trying to create this year. This is where my focus is this year.
Ooh, okay. Well, I'm excited to uncover a little bit of that in our conversation today. Typically, when we're starting out, we ask our guests what is their cubicle to CEO story. But I realize that your background is a bit more, unique than our typical guest. You've worked in all parts of the entertainment industry. You just mentioned you come from radio. You also have been a writer, a director, an actress. So I guess my version of this question to you is what was the catalyst for you in going from artist, I guess, for lack of a better all encompassing term, to author, where you're now, the author of two best selling books?
Well, it's an interesting question with an interesting answer. So, like you said, I was acting, directing, writer was not in my repertoire, and I was not ever planning on being an author. And it kind of happened to me. My life blew up in 2017. I found out my husband was having an affair with a 19-year-old for 6 months, filed for divorce, left, and shortly after that, met a guy, fell madly in love with each other, and had this kind of whirlwind romance. And he invited me on a month-long trip to Italy. 48 hours before we were getting on the plane, he told me he needed to go by himself and broke up with me. And I was absolutely devastated. This man broke my heart like my ex husband never could have done. And I was sitting on my bed at my mother's house because that's where you move when you get divorced, with just like tears streaming down my face and a bottle of wine, and was like, okay, Gabrielle, you have a decision to make. You can either stay at home heartbroken or you can go travel Europe for a month by yourself. So I took a backpack and a leather bound journal, and I did 6 countries over the span of a month, and I wrote the book Eat, Pray, FML.
I love your Genesis story because it is so unbelievable, and I mean that in that way of, like, incredulous, right? It's one of
Yeah.
those stories where you're like, Did Hollywood write this movie? Like, how is that someone's life?" That two just horrific things happen to you in a row in terms of breaking trust and all that, and I'm assuming that Eat, Pray, FML was inspired by the bestseller Eat, Pray, Love. Am I right in that assumption?
Well, it's funny because I actually at the time had never read the book and had never seen the movie. And the night before I left on my trip, I was like, all right, why not watch Eat, Pray, Love if I'm about to go on this journey? And I remember sitting there in my bed being like, oh my God, this is my life. Like, this is literally what's happening to me. Um, and it really was exactly what you said. I was like, this is so ridiculous and crazy that all of this has happened to me. Like, my life has become this weird mix of a sitcom and a horror film. I have to write about this. And I knew whatever I was going to learn on the trip and what that trip was going to mean for me in my life was going to be really powerful and a very big deal within myself and my own healing journey. And if I could bring everybody along on that journey with me, it might be able to help heal some other people along the way.
Absolutely. I really resonate with that because I've always been of the belief that when you allow yourself to be seen in a very vulnerable way, it actually makes others feel seen by you, you know?
100%.
So I can't imagine what it's like to bare your soul to essentially strangers through a book and sharing some of your darkest moments as you're navigating through discovering like who am I, what is my life now that this has happened. But obviously the book really hit a note with your readers and has become a best-selling book. And what's so incredible about this feat, for those of you listening who have not read Gabrielle's book, we'll make sure to link both of her books, both Eat Pray FML and also her second book, in the show notes for you to add to cart after hearing this. But what's really incredible, and the reason I wanted to bring you on for this case study, is you're a self-published author and it became a best-selling book with, last I checked, over 7,000 reviews on Amazon, which is insane.
Yeah.
And TikTok was really the channel that allowed you to blow up the visibility for this book and attract all of these new readers. So that's the case study we're here to talk about today, is how Gabrielle took her book to TikTok and was able to garner more than 100 million views and really become that bestseller. So my question first to you is, why the self-publishing route? Was that something that was a decision born out of necessity because that was your only option, or was that an intentional choice from the get-go?
I love that we're getting to talk about this because I don't get to share this part of the journey a lot. And it's actually a really interesting story. So I came back from that trip and was like, this is what I was put on this earth to do. This book is going to be a big deal. It's going to change my life. It's going to help so many people. This is it. And I took it to my manager, who was like my acting and my directing manager at the time, and was like, take this to the big five publishing companies. Like, that's where it needs to be. It needs to be on every shelf. And we started shopping the manuscript around, and every company was like, it's a little too in your face. It's a little too raw. There's a lot of cussing in it, or I think it's a little too long. Like, maybe if we shorten it, or if you like take some stuff out. Like, they really wanted to edit it and change it into something that it wasn't, and that I knew what I had needed to be put out in that like raw, authentic form for it to really resonate with people. I didn't want to do this cookie cutter version of what my journey was. And I think one of the companies even said, I don't know if there's a big enough demographic for it. And I sat there and went, like, any woman anywhere
Who's
and men?
experienced
Like,
heartbreak? Yeah, the human
what?
experience.
It was such an interesting feedback. Like, just tell me you don't like it or you're not interested. Like, don't say something that makes you look dumb. So I really was like, okay, well, this is not going the way I thought it would. And a friend of mine introduced me to a woman who eventually became my self-publishing mentor, and now a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Kelly Randis. She wrote the best-selling book Spilled Milk that she also self-published. And she and I had an hour-long conversation, and she's like, let me tell you why you should self-publish even if you have an offer from a publishing company. And this was so foreign to my brain. I was like, what? No, that can't be right. And what people don't realize is that if you're with a publishing company, unless you're a massive name, like you're Chelsea Handler or one of the Bachelorettes or a star athlete, they're not going to take a first-time writer and put all this money behind marketing it. Are they going to make sure it gets printed and put it on some shelves in Barnes and Noble? Yeah. But then people have to walk into Barnes and Noble, browse the shelves, see your book cover, be interested enough to pick it up, read the back, and then decide if they're going to jump on it and buy it. That's a lot of stuff that needs to happen.
Hmm.
So the marketing behind all of it still falls in the author's lap. So even if you've signed this deal with a great publisher and they're going to, maybe put you on their website and get you into stores, pay for your editor, which I do understand is like a costly expense in some capacity. They're not going to like market it and put advertising money behind it. Like, that's your job. It's really still in your court to do the grassroots marketing of it. And so she's explaining all this to me, and I'm like, well, why would I pay someone so much money? Because when you're with a publishing company, you're getting a 20% royalty.
Yeah.
Why would I give up that much of my hard-earned work if I'm still pounding the pavement to get people to buy the book. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. And then it becomes, how well can you market? Because that's the end game, whether you're with a publishing company or not. It's how well are you going to market your book? And for me, when I finally was like, okay, I'm going to do the self-publishing journey, and there were many other things that drew me to that. The thought of them being able to decide what went on the cover was like, no. And if I would have signed a deal with them, they could have held the book for 2 years until it hit shelves. And this for me was such an emotional and personal journey with me. Like, I had been through so much that I was like, no, 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 no. My soul needs this to be out now in the world, like, so
Mm.
I can like wipe my hands clean and keep on my own journey. So there were a lot of elements that I liked the control aspect that you get in self-publishing. I shot my own cover with a photographer, took it to my own cover designer, and like we like did it creatively together. And knowing that I was going to have the rights to the book eventually, so that if it's ever being shopped around for a film, I don't have to go to a publishing company and say, oh, hey, can we like make a deal here? Like, it's only me. And I really liked that aspect, especially coming from the film and TV industry. So when I got to the decision of, okay, I'm going to self-publish, then it was the journey of, how are we going to market this? And at first, when I first released this book, which was, oh God, June of 2019, I had like 10, 11,000 followers on Instagram. A large portion of those people were my friends. Like, I did not have fans. I didn't have, I had some people that had seen like the indie movies that I had done, but like by no means was my Instagram fan base going to make a book a bestseller. So it was doing okay. It was selling probably anywhere from, the first week did really well because I had been hyping it up a lot. So the first week it sold like 500 to 600 copies, which is great for a first-time author who's never published a book before. And I was really happy with that. And then consistently it would sell like, anywhere from 3 to 7 copies a day. Sometimes if I was on a podcast, it would, have a spike and do like 30 to 40 copies.
Mm.
But nothing that was like crazy life changing. It was great passive income that was already coming in, because as opposed to a 20% royalty per book that you sell, you're now getting, $6 and change per book that you're selling. So the margin is insane of like the difference of self-publishing versus publishing. But it wasn't, gonna get it to that next level. And then the pandemic started, and then TikTok came about, and that's what really kind of changed the game for me and changed my life.
I love that you came in here on this like very first meaty question with this hot take of self-publishing is the way to go. I actually had it written in my notebook. I was looking down as you were talking and I was like, wow, she really read my mind, because I had this I was going to ask you, for everyone listening, like if you had to tell someone right now, is self-publishing the way to go, or would you recommend trying for publishing first? And it sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, that you feel strongly that self-publishing gives you a lot more options. It sounds like is the big draw for you. Yes.
I do. Yeah, I feel like it gives you a lot more freedom creatively. I feel like it gives you a lot more control. That's not to say you can just hit post on a book and expect it to take off. Like, I've been very savvy and smart in the way I've like discovered how to use social media to market the book. So that's a necessity in any publishing, but definitely self-publishing. The only way I would be convinced to work with a publishing company at this stage in my career is if I were to get, for example, Eat, Pray, FML translated into every other language.
Oh, yeah.
That's something, and only because it's such a headache, so much time and energy, so confusing because it's in a different language.
Right.
I just did it translating it to Spanish,
Hmm.
and that was like the one language where I was like, okay, I'll do it. incredibly expensive. It's an investment for sure. But if I were to ever be like, okay, let's do like another 10 languages, then I would sign a deal with a company. But if I were to publish another book, there's no one that could convince me that doing it, especially with the fan base that I have now, that doing it with a company who's going to take such a big percent of my profits is a good idea.
I love that breakdown in your rationale of why you believe that. And, it kind of reminds me, I I really liked, well, if you were watching this on YouTube, you'll notice my face lit up when Gabrielle was saying how, maybe someday there could be an opportunity for this for her book to be shopped around as a potential film script. And of course, that over the last many years, we've had some amazing books that have, been adapted into movies. Of course, like Wild is like one of the first ones that come to mind.
Right.
And I've always really admired the way people's brains think long term. Like the example that comes to mind is since you're from the industry, how Reese Witherspoon, how she set up her book club as a way to like
Yeah,
build.
it's genius.
So genius. If you're not familiar with her model, basically, if you're listening to this, Reese created a book club of her own where she would go to these authors and say, "Hey, I have this huge audience that you can access, and we can get your book in front of all of these millions of women. But in exchange, I want first rights to your book to shop around if." We decide to turn it into a movie if the demand is there. And so, that's how she was able to get some of these really big deals. And it's such long term thinking. And I
Mhm.
just wanted to highlight that of you, Gabrielle, and give you kudos because so few, I think, creatives come into the business aspect of creating a product like a book and think beyond just, oh, what is that, upfront paycheck that I can get for a book deal? And especially if it's an attractive book deal, like a 6-figure contract, so many people go
Right.
for that easy money without thinking of the long term potential for what they're creating. So, hats off to you. Just wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's so interesting because so many times I'll be in interviews and people will say, "Well, did you have any idea it was going to be such a success and create this for you?" And I'm always like, "Okay, how do I say this humbly because I'm so grateful and so
Own
thankful
it.
for everything that I have." But like, yeah, the second I found out I was going on that trip and I heard in my head, I got to write a book about this, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to write it. It's going to help change a lot of women's lives. It's then going to become something on screen." Like I saw the long-term vision for it in that moment. It was just about being patient enough to execute it, which is always like my biggest struggle in life.
I think everyone can relate to that. Oh my gosh. The ideas are like we have so many ideas, right? We're never short of ideas. The execution is where the real winners, I think, emerge. And you've done an excellent job, obviously, of that so far, which kind of brings us, back into that marketing conversation of, okay, so you launch this book, it sells 500 to 600 copies in its first week, which, like you said, is incredible for a first time author, especially without any external support from a publisher. But then at what point did you, when TikTok came about in the pandemic, were you an early adopter and you were immediately saw that this was where you could get that discoverability? Or did you kind of like cautiously try it and then something happened where a video took off and then you decided, oh, this is the channel for me?
Yeah. Okay. So again, really interesting story, and we'll get very analytical and then a little bit of woo woo at the same time.
Please
So,
do.
um, I fought it tooth and nail. I was like, I am not getting on another social media app. This is for 15 to 16-year-olds that are dancing. Like I'm not doing it. And then, we got further into the pandemic and I was like, oh, I'm really bored. So I downloaded it just to consume the content because there's great stuff on there. Like the animal videos that come across my For You page, like I can sit there for an hour and scroll on this stupid stuff. Like it's just entertainment.
Right.
And so I started like slowly posting just like dumb videos. I had maybe 200 some followers on there, like nothing. And then I saw my writing mentor, who has released her book 7 or 8 years ago now. Like, this is not a new book, starting to post about it. And her videos were going viral. And she was selling a ridiculous amount of books. And when that happens and you have self published,
Hmm.
it's a direct hit to your bank account. Like, it's a much bigger deal than if you're selling, 10,000 copies with a publisher.
Right.
So I was seeing her succeed and do all this. And I'm sitting here going, okay, but like none of my stuff's going to go viral. I have 200 followers. Like I'm going to be posting these videos to no one. And there admittedly was a little bit of jealousy watching her use this formula so seamlessly. Everything she posted was going viral. I know that was translating into book sales and numbers. And I was like, oh my God, if I could just tap into that. And my mom is a world healer apart from being an actress. And I was doing some healing work with her around it. We were up in Sedona on a mother-daughter trip. And I was telling her about like this frustrations that I was having around this. And she was like, Gabrielle, you have to be ready to have the story be out there and be as big as it's going to be, and know what that comes with. Because as we know, especially on social media, like not all the feedback and stuff is love. So you have to be prepared for that. And you have to be happy for Kelly and send her love and excitement around her success. Because so oftentimes when that like ugly jealousy feeling comes in, we don't take a moment to stop and be like, oh, there's enough room for everybody at this party. Like, let me be happy for what she's achieving right now. So I went to bed that night, posted a video to my like 300 followers, and went to bed, put on a meditation. And in that meditation, I sat there and just sent her love and congratulations and like happiness, and went to bed feeling really, really good. Posted this at like 11 o'clock at night, like not even a peak time to my 300 people. I woke up the next morning around 8:30, and the video was almost at 1 million views and had hundreds and hundreds of comments. People saying, oh my God, I just bought this on Amazon. Oh my God, I can't wait to read this. And I saw it happen literally before my eyes. And with self-publishing, because you control all of it, you can literally open up your KDP account, go on the back end and be like, okay, video's going viral, and you watch all of your numbers start to spike in real time. And it was that moment that I was like, oh, this is not a social media app. This is a gnarly marketing tool that gives you advertising that you can't pay for.
That is like a tagline that I feel like maybe TikTok's marketing team would be interested to
Right.
to hear, to borrow, to license from you. Go trademark that, Gabrielle. Um, I love the analytical side of this because the data nerd in me really likes to see like, okay, I put in this input, this output, happens as a
Yeah.
result. So I think it's really cool that you were able to directly correlate that video with book sales. I have to ask, that first video, um, what was the video about? Like, was it a talking head video? Was it one of those trending audios? Like, what did you say in that video?
So it was to a song that had been trending, but I was like very late to the party. It was that song that starts and it went like, and then it
Yep,
like starts into the music.
yep.
Um, and it was literally a minute video of my story. So it started with a picture of me and my ex-husband at my wedding with, I think there was a pig emoji on his face, to like keep his identity secret. And it said, I was married for almost 2 years. My husband cheated on me with a 19-year-old for 6 months. I filed for divorce and left. And then I brought up a picture of Javier and I with his face blurred. And it said, I met a man, we fell madly in love, had a whirlwind romance. He invited me on a trip to Italy. 48 hours before we were getting on the plane, he told me he needed to go by himself. I was devastated, and then it comes up with a picture of me holding the book. It says, I went anyways and wrote a book about it. And then it goes into all the pictures and videos from my Europe trip. So it really like is a quick synopsis of what you're about to get from the book. But the key to doing this, and what so many people don't take care and realize before they launch something, is people are so like it's like instant gratification on social media. Like if you don't have something that people can then go buy right away, they don't care and it's gone. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if you have a video that goes viral a week before your book comes out, will a handful of them probably be like, "Ooh, I should like remember to buy this," and like go back and like keep following her? Sure. But the reason why it made such a big impact financially for my book sales, because they could literally close TikTok, open Amazon and go find my book, or go to my profile, click the link in it and be taken to my website. So it was a huge, like, the second they see it and they're like, "Oh my god, I want to read that." There was a place where they could go click it and buy it, and the whole process was done in 2 minutes.
This is gold. Okay, I want to pull out two takeaways for our listeners. One, I love the way that you basically created a book trailer within a
Mhm.
short form video, right? Giving that, taking people on that journey of, okay, like this is like a movie trailer and now you want to consume the movie, right? Or the book
Yeah.
or whatnot. And so even if you're not an author, if you're listening to this, I want you to think about like what is something that someone could watch where they understand where I'm taking them, that journey for your
Mhm.
customer, and how do you intrigue them enough that they need to hear the rest of the story essentially, because everything at the end of the day can be told as a story. So that's the
Totally.
first takeaway that I got from Gabrielle. And then the second thing that you said, Gabrielle, that I really love is you have to be ready to meet the opportunity when the moment is there, not after the fact. And this is something that's a little bit of a contrarian take to what I think a lot of entrepreneurs approach their businesses like. I think too many people approach with the mindset of, I need to build an audience first, build, and then I will create something to sell to them. Whereas I think what worked so well for you, like you mentioned, is you didn't wait for the audience to be built to have something ready to go for them. You had that next action step already lined up so that when the opportunity met you, you had everything ready to go. And I really, really love that approach. So I just wanted to pull that out for our listeners because I think it's so impactful, and it kind of leads directly into the question I was going to ask you next, which is, that was your first viral video, but obviously since then you've garnered, millions of views. And so for you these days, how are you continually driving traffic off of TikTok to take a specific action? Are you calling out the action you want them to take in a written CTA on your videos? Are you always directing them to the link in your bio on TikTok? Are you directing them off platform? Like what is your strategy around capturing that attention?
It varies, and it's been a challenge because I've been on TikTok for 2 years now. So I do get a handful of people that don't realize that I'm literally on there to sell a book and that it's marketing, that are like, "God, are you gonna talk about anything else?" And they don't realize that, like, when a video goes viral, it doesn't get shown to just your audience, it gets shown to all the millions of people that aren't following you. So anytime I've had a video go into the multi-millions, I see all my book sales go up. So I
Mhm.
don't really care if there's like a small percentage of people being like, "Oh my god, are you ever going to talk about anything else?" It's like, "No, as long as this is working and it's selling books," which, there's the financial aspect of it for me, obviously. Like, this is my main source of income, this is my career. So yeah, I'm going to do it to support myself, but I also feel good about it because it's a book that's changing women's lives around the world. So it's also doing something good. And I know the people that are going to read it are going to benefit from it and heal and grow from it. So it's really a win win on my end. But it has been a challenge to be like, okay, there are certain trends I'll still hop on that are like, a dance trend to a song that's going viral. And I'll do the stupid little dance because I was a dancer growing up. So it's like not that foreign to me. And I'll just write the story, like a version of my story as it goes. And I usually in those don't direct people at all to where the book is. I let people go to the comments and be like, "Oh my God, what's the book called?" That
Mm.
then boosts engagement. And I can be like, "Eat, Pray, FML, the link's in my bio." And, or they'll like be smart and just click on my page and it says it right there. But I feel like there's a psychology in it where if you're not being like, "And please buy my book," they're like, "Oh, this is a really cool story. I need to know more."
Mm.
They don't feel like they're being pressured to go purchase something. So I usually err on that side. There's some videos I've done where I'm talking to camera and I'm telling a story, and I usually focus on like a juicy excerpt from my life. So one of the videos early on that did really well was a stitch to tell me about how you found out your significant other was cheating on you. And I used that first clip of the girl and then came in and said, so I found my husband's phone in a sock drawer, and just went on from there and started telling the little story of how I like initially caught him cheating. And at the very tail end of that video, I say, and then I went to Europe and traveled solo for a month and wrote a life-changing book about it that's now a bestseller. Okay, bye. And everyone was like, wait, sorry, what? What's the book? I need to read it. Oh my God. So you really like find the ways where it's not so in your face. There's some videos that I put up that people go crazy in the comments. And then there's like a handful of them that are like, this is just marketing for her book. And I'm like, yeah, guys, yeah. And that's what it is. You got to own it. So I think there's a lot of different ways to get creative around it. It's easier for me because my story is my life. So it's interesting to people that it's like, no, these are things that I actually went through. And I wrote a book about it. I see a lot of authors who write fiction who go on and they'll start telling the story that's like the plot of the book as if it's like a real life story. And then at the end, they're like, so this isn't my life, but it is written about in the book, da 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 da, which I think is super smart and super creative. And those videos do very well. So it's just about finding what's going to sell your product without feeling like you're on there to sell a product.
Yeah. And I mean, there are a couple things that you said that I think are again so wise. One is that focus is so underrated, and I love that you own the fact that you use TikTok not as a consumer, but I mean, sure, we all consume videos, but like not primarily as a consumer, but as a creator, and you're really understanding why you're there. The intentionality of why you're on TikTok is to sell your book, and you own that fact.
Yeah.
And the fact that you talk about your book in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not a direct call to buy it, even if it's just telling the story of it or the process of it, I I love that you repeat that topic over and over, because it's actually something that I have noticed about some of my I personally am not on TikTok creating content at the moment, but I've noticed in my friends who have been successful on that platform that they literally do talk about the same one to two topics over and over and over and over again. And from the outside, if someone's a loyal follower, it does kind of feel like, wow, you're really beating a dead horse. Like you've said this story a
Right.
million times. But I think to
Right.
your point, what's unique about TikTok is the For You page, is the discoverability outside of your
Yeah.
existing followers. So it really doesn't matter if your existing followers have heard it before, right?
Totally. And if you're doing it in an authentic way, like my loyal followers who have read the book do not care. They're like, post this story a million times. I want so many more people to discover this book.
Mhm.
Do you, girl? The people that say that on my videos are people that continuously see them on the For You page because they've probably been cheated on or they've probably had a bad
Oh,
relationship.
no.
And like TikTok is pushing my videos to them. And they're people that, instead of just being a normal human and scrolling on, are like, God, why don't you like do something else? So
Mm.
it really is, I have a whole series now on TikTok where I reply and read men's comments, like bad comments from men on my viral videos, and people love it, and it's become a whole separate series that I'm able to like do as a departure. But in the beginning of those videos, I have to like intro it, and I'm like, welcome to the series where I read triggered men's comments on my viral videos. All you need to know about the video, here's the synopsis of the book. Let's get into it. So you're still hearing this is what the book's about. Also, let's go have fun and like make fun of these men who are just trolling my page. So it really has become a different type of marketing. And I think that's why we're seeing so many big companies, instead of spending, hundreds and millions of dollars on billboards and on TV advertisements, they're sending influencers to frickin' Dubai to like, do a bunch of TikTok videos and get all this like free exposure and this content, because on social media, that's where people are buying things right now. It's a weird world we're living in, but you can't hate it if you want to be a part of it.
Yeah. And, that's hilarious, by the way, that you turned those hateful comments into a whole new content. It's that saying everything is content, and it really is. It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of what is the late night show? Is it with Seth Meyers? I can't remember. The one where like celebrities read
Mean tweets.
mean tweets.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
It's exactly the same.
I love it. I'm obsessed. So this is encouragement to you all that if you get a hateful comment, it's content. It's content. You can start this series now.
Yep.
Also, I do have to say, something else that you mentioned earlier that I just want to circle back on is how you mentioned sometimes you leave that element of mystery or intrigue where you don't name your book so that people are almost
Mhm.
forced to comment and say, "Oh my gosh, what is this book called?" And then to your point, some of your loyal followers, I'm sure, jump in and advocate for you and are like, "Oh my
Totally.
god, you got to go
Yeah.
read this book," which is amazing. So like built-in social proof. But I also have heard this kind of a hack that some people, and whether or not this, I don't think this is necessarily like a great strategy to use every time long term, but just as a interesting point to feeding the algorithm. I had this friend who purposely misspelled one of 4 points he was talking about in his video.
Mhm.
And as a result, he got flooded with like hundreds of comments of people being like, "You spelled that word wrong, you spelled that word wrong." But by his comments being flooded with all of these, corrections, it actually made the video go viral from all the boosted
Yeah.
engagement, which is hilarious. So I'm just curious. I mean, you just shared with us some really great ideas in the different types of content that work well on TikTok. But I'm curious, have you come across any interesting hacks, so to speak, like that have really helped maybe boost your engagement when it's been low or in a rut, or even helped you like tap into new audiences outside of just waiting to be shown on the For You page?
Yeah, totally. TikTok is such a hit or miss. Like you never know what's going to work, what's not. Like they change the algorithm every few weeks and it's like the most exhausting thing if you're like really trying to follow it. So I kind of have just always been like, look, I'm going to like put out content that I think's going to do well, put out good content, and if it goes viral great. If not, then like okay, what's the harm in it? And there are certain things like those hacks that you were talking about. I think that one specifically can be a little dangerous if you're trying to sell something or get a point across, because if you distract people too much and that's the only thing people are talking about, then like, yeah, it's gone viral, but like, is it doing its job at that point? For
Truth.
me,
Yes.
one thing that I do a lot is I will copy, once I post the video, I'll copy the link from my TikTok. I'll go to my Instagram story and I'll say something that's really cheeky, that makes people curious as to what I could be talking about. For example, if I do a video that has something to do with Javier, which is the guy that broke up with me before the Europe trip, everybody wants to know like where he is, what he's doing, do we still talk? So I'll say something along the lines of Javier update with like a wink and then link the TikTok in my Instagram story. So all the people that don't have TikTok or that are on Instagram at the time click that link, open the video and watch it, and that starts pushing the engagement in the algorithm. So that's a trick that I usually lean on.
That's so smart. I love that cross-channel, pollination. That's that's great. Now I'm like, I need to go catch up on all the Javier updates. Okay. That worked, and here's another cross-pollination on a podcast, right? I'm sure some of you are gonna
I love
dig
it.
up Gabrielle's account from this interview and go down the rabbit hole there. So that's awesome. I wanna ask you another hot take, from you personally. Because of your background in the entertainment industry and working as a creative, as an artist in many facets, do you consider authors in the work that you do now? Do you view yourself as an entrepreneur, or do you think that authors are not necessarily meant to be categorized with entrepreneurs? I'm just curious what your hot take on that is.
What an interesting question. I think it's dependent on the individual. I would definitely say I'm an author and an entrepreneur. I released the book. Now there's a podcast. There's a journal that spun off that. There's a whole line of merch. Like there's been a whole company that's been created off this one book. I also think there's authors that want to sip on a glass of whiskey, write their feelings into a computer, and send it to a publisher and call it a day, and that's totally valid as well.
Mhm.
So I think it's dependent on the individual. I think that there's definitely a world. I mean, I've proven that there's a world to where authors can expand into that entrepreneurial space, and have it be a really great, exciting, successful thing. But I also definitely think there's authors and writers that are just like, no, I'm good with just my words, and like I'll send it out and can be anonymous if wanted.
I really like the way that you explained that because to your point, like everything you've said, basically, you kind of just have to know for yourself what the big picture is, right? Like, why are you
Yes.
doing this in the first place? And I think that's why I love talking to people like you who get that context really influences everything, right? Because some people write books purely as a way to, let's say, generate leads for a higher ticket offer, whereas some people write books because it's their creative outlet, whereas some people write books because maybe it's a truth that needs to be told, like it was for you, and then it unfolds into something so much greater and more beautiful. So I really, really love your answer to that. And I guess to kind of wrap up our case study today, you've shared so many golden nuggets, so thank you for that. Do you see from your consistent efforts using TikTok as a marketing channel for your book, are you seeing pretty consistent sales on a weekly, monthly basis that still, what is the word? Mirror what the sale volume was at the beginning of your book release? Or are you kind of, have you seen a wane or a dip from, when it was in its launch phase, but it's still, regularly selling week after week?
Yeah. So after my first viral video on TikTok, and I've had probably, oh God, I would say roughly 10 to 15 go really viral over the last 2 years. You can track on, my sales. You can see when those viral videos are happening. They do crazy numbers. And those numbers then, of course, eventually will drop back down. But the daily sales, when I haven't had a video go viral, haven't really been posting, not really doing much, the consistent daily sales are still far above what it was when I launched the book.
Wow.
So the whole thing has gone up massively. Um, and at the end of the day, it's passive income. So all of those viral videos, whether they're not showing to a bunch of people right now. I haven't posted anything in the last month and a half, and that last video that went viral on my account is still bringing in comments, still bringing in views, still bringing in what book is this? So it's really about where can you market that's going to create a longevity and a passive income for you. I do want to mention, because I know we're wrapping up, as far as the publishing versus self-publishing, one of the really interesting things I've been able to see is I did Eat Pray FML myself, self-published on Amazon. I did the Eat Pray FML audiobook with a company,
Oh,
because
interesting.
the book became successful, and I started getting offers, and I was like, I don't know anything about doing an audiobook. Like, let's have them produce it and do it. So knowing what I know now, I did my second the sequel to Eat Pray FML, called The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. I did that audiobook on my own. And the difference financially between the what checks I get from the company that did the first one to what I'm making independently on the second one, which doesn't sell high numbers like the first one does. It does really well, but not anything comparatively, is shocking. Like, I will never forget when I had this video go viral last year, and I got the numbers back from the audiobook company, and it was like, well, it did like this many units, and it was something crazy, like the net profit was something like $65,000 for that quarter.
Wow.
And they were like, so here's your $7,000 check. And I was like, "Wait,
Wait a minute.
what?" Like, "I'm sorry, come again?" The second book where I produced everything myself and released it independently, I again don't do numbers quite that crazy. Because obviously when I do my videos to try and market and go viral, it's based on the first book because you have to read that before the sequel. The audiobook to produce from start to finish and get put out was about $3,200. I made that back in the first week it was available
That's
because
amazing.
the profit margin is so insanely different when you're not getting just a 20% royalty on something. So if anything, takeaway wise for people that are like thinking of going on this journey themselves, like really do your due diligence and don't pay people such a big chunk of your hard-earned money when you're gonna have to hustle and market it on your own anyways.
That's such great encouragement, and I think a lot to think on. By the way, if you're listening to this and you are curious of about exploring the self-publishing world, we had another guest come on, I think a few years ago, that talked about how you can actually self-publish a book. So if you're interested in more of a
Mhm.
how-to instructional, we'll link that in the show notes for you to check out. But Gabrielle, you kind of previewed or alluded to, your second book now, The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. Um, what is next for you beyond, these two books? Do you have plans to write a third? Is it just growing the readership and listenership of the two that you have? Is it shopping your script to a studio? I'd love to hear what's next for you.
Yeah, so the podcast, it has been a branch off of both of the books, which has kind of like grown on its own and had this whole separate audience come in, which is really wild to me. So that's something we do every week. We release it on Wednesdays. It's called FML Talk, and it's become this kind of like safe space to have therapy with me where I also drop a bunch of F bombs and like, make you laugh. And and the first two books are available, obviously, and people are still picking those up and discovering those, which is really great. I released a self love healing journal. I can't say the title on here because it's got the F word in it, but it's F off, I'm healing. um, and that's kind of a step by step guide for people who are not healing from heartbreak, like healing from trauma and any of the stuff that life throws at you, forgiveness, that I really kind of break everything down and like walk you through step by step on how to heal a lot of the stuff that has happened to you in your life. So that's also available on Amazon or on my website. And yes, we're in the very, very early stages of bringing Eat Pray FML to the screen. So that's about all I can say on it right now, but it's exciting, and that would be a really incredible thing to see come to fruition.
I am obsessed. I cannot wait. I Okay, I do have to plug this in as one final question before you tell people, where to further connect with you. If you could choose any actress to play you in this movie, would it be yourself, or would you like who would you pick?
No, I would love to like produce it and really see it and help it come to life. I have no interest in reliving all of that again. Maybe playing like a fun friend in it, but not
Sure.
myself. There's honestly so many talented, incredible actresses that could do so many different things with this role. I just adore and love Florence Pugh. I think she's like the next Meryl Streep. So
Mm,
she would be very high on that list, but there's honestly so many girls that I know could kill it.
I love it. All right, where should people stalk you, connect with you in a loving way?
Come stalk me. Come find all my videos so you can steal my ideas and like start marketing your own stuff. That's all that TikTok's about. So I'm on TikTok at Gabrielle_Stone, and I'm on Instagram at Gabrielle Stone. The books are both available exclusively on Amazon. You can just search the titles, Eat, Pray, FML, and The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. They're also available signed by me on my website where we have all the merch and the healing journal for sale. And the podcast is FML Talk, and it comes out every Wednesday.
I love it. We are going to drop all of those links below in the show notes. So if you're someone who's lazy like me and doesn't like to search things, just scroll below, click, and you'll be there. Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for your time today. I really enjoyed our chat.
You're so welcome. Thank you for such a lovely interview. I really enjoyed it.